Welcome everyone to the Men's Yoga Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Dustin Vieler. Dustin is a yoga therapist. Is that correct?
Yes.
And a teacher of Hatha 84.
Correct.
Or am I saying that correct?
Yeah, it's the classical 84.
Classical 84.
But it's in the Hatha yoga lineage, yes.
Cool. Yeah, I'm hoping to get into a little bit of that and a bit more of understanding of that and sharing that with everyone. But
Absolutely.
anyways, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And sharing your experience. And I mean, you've modeled for Yo Clothing, and you got to show off some of your amazing moves, your amazing asanas you can pull off, and it's quite some unique stuff you got kicking there. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about who's Dustin and where you're from.
Well, I was born and raised in Dundas, Ontario.
Cool.
So I've been around the Hamilton area for most of my life. Lived out in BC for about a year and then came back, and I was a welder before I got into yoga. And I had gotten into yoga through my chiropractor, who'd been prodding me for probably 3 or 4 years to come and try her stretch class at Moto Yoga in Dundas. And it was interesting. I was always very interested in alternative healing methods, but yoga never really sparked an interest. And I finally went to her class after she'd given me a free class pass, and after one class I was completely hooked. It spiraled into an everyday practice pretty fast, and it didn't take me long to actually quit welding, probably about 6 months. And yeah, it was spiraled pretty fast. And then I went to Mohawk College for health, wellness, and fitness. And during that program, I'd found my first yoga teacher training, which was the De La Salle training in Hamilton. And then I never ended up going back for a second year of Mohawk, because I kept chasing yoga teacher trainings and going down that road. And that's what led me to where I am today, yoga therapy and teaching the classical Hatha system. And I also own my own small studio here in Hamilton, just out of my house. So I run some small group classes and little treatment space, and you can see some of it behind me. It looks a little bigger than it looks in the camera here, but
cool. So what was that like? Why from welding to like yoga? Like, what was there something you were going through at the time? Like, you were seeing a chiropractor? Was it a physical thing that you were trying to improve?
Yeah, so I had a lot of back and neck issues at the time from welding, being cramped in small spaces, always welding with the welding gun above my head. And so she was literally treating my whole entire spine from bottom to the top. It was pretty bad. And like literally the first yoga class I did, I felt the benefits, and I saw exactly what she was preaching to me for years. And why did I make the switch to being a yoga instructor? Well, I never actually liked welding. It was something I was very good at, and probably still would be. I just have a knack for building things, fabricating things out of steel, and I have very good hand-eye coordination. So I was actually teaching welding in college for a few years too. And that didn't do it for me either. So once I found the yoga, I felt like I just fell into a place I was supposed to be in.
How many teacher trainings do you do? You kind of mentioned it seemed to be more than a few.
Oh, I've done a multitude of teacher trainings over the years now. So let me see. I've done the De La Salle, which was Hatha Vinyasa training. I've done restorative yoga. I've done yin yoga. I've done forest yoga, actually two forest yoga teacher trainings, which is also a Hatha Vinyasa style. Um,
And they
and
call
then,
it forest yoga.
yeah, so that's actually the main area of yoga that I've been trained in, and it was developed by a lady named Anna Forrest,
Mm.
and she's still alive. Uh, but the that yoga series is based off of both Shivananda, Iyengar, and Ashtanga yoga.
Oh wow.
And it's a very very intense physical practice, but it has a lot of therapeutic benefits too. It's really geared towards a lot of the ailments that are going on in the general society today. So treating neck pain, back pain, hip pain. Uh, so I learned actually a lot of my prescriptive yoga and therapy techniques through the study of forest yoga.
With that, I mean, that combination of that lineage, typically we look at the physical, like the muscular and skeletal, when we need to fix ourselves. But would that go deeper, say into like our organs and deeper into the body?
Absolutely. So the yoga postures, the more advanced you get in yoga asanas, the more systems the asanas will affect in your body. So a newer student, you will be hitting more of the muscular system, the fascia, and then once they start to go deeper into the postures, they'll hit the ligaments, they'll hit the tendons. And then after that, you start to compress the internal organs and the digestive system. But that's why there's so many progressions of postures. If that's what you're asking, if I'm answering your question correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, it almost seems like you start at the external, you work on your external parts, and then you're slowly working deeper and deeper within the body.
Absolutely, and that's the thing is, I think in terms of in a modern day yoga class, when they give you, say, a modification in a class for a posture that you might not have the full expression of yet, which is totally valid. Everybody needs a modification at some point. But the statement of you're getting the same benefits when you do this modification is completely a lie.
It's funny. I did one this morning. I did a class this morning, and that's what you're getting the same benefits as everyone else. That was brought up.
No, you're getting an absolutely great physical benefit. Like you're doing much better for yourself in a modification than forcing yourself into a deeper expression of the posture when your body's not ready. But are you getting the same benefit as the advanced practitioner beside you? Absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah.
I think regardless, you're getting the benefit of working on yourself. That would be the basic sense of it. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And every stage of every posture is also mental, right? It's working on your mental state, your emotional state, your spiritual state, because you absolutely have to meet yourself where you're at every stage of the practice.
And that can be a challenge for people. I mean, that's a challenge for myself. And I feel like I've been practicing yoga for quite a long time. Well, I wouldn't say quite a long time for a newbie. Like I've been practicing for about solid for like 2 years at least, like almost every day. But I still have that when I go to a class that my mind is going externally, right? Like I'm not coming within, and my ego kind of gets carried away a little bit within classes. Someone on your caliber, does that still happen?
To a certain capacity, yeah. I mean, because And no matter how advanced I am, there's always somebody that's going to be better and more skillful. And so, yeah, there's quite often times where I look at, a posture that somebody else is doing that I'm working on, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. They put a lot of work into it. And
Yeah.
I can't say that I sit there and feel badly about myself if I can't do it like when I was a newer practitioner, because I used to do that too, but I definitely do aspire still to work to some of those postures that I don't have. And it's like, I wonder when my body will open to get there. But then, I got to remind myself too that time and patience, and it will, because I've nailed every single posture that I've really wanted to nail so far. So
is there a practice while you're in your asanas that you do to help center yourself? Like, do you focus on your breath? Is there something what helps you?
Definitely deep yogic breathing. I'm always thinking about, if you know of the 3-part yogic breath, breathing into your low belly, your rib cage, and into the chest. I think about that do that to the best of my ability in each posture and each transition, and that's what really keeps me centered.
Could you provide an example just in case? Like, how would that be when you're breathing, just for people? So, like, you talked about the 3 layers, right? The deep belly.
Yeah. So a 3-part yogic breath is the very basic form of pranayama. So if you're sitting in any position or any posture, really, you want to feel the low belly just below the belly button. Okay, that's going to move outwards on the inhale. The rib cage is going to expand outwards on the inhale. Your collarbones and your shoulders are going to lift up on the inhale. Okay, so that all those 3 parts happen at once as a whole, and then they all contract together on the exhale. So you're stretching your breath into your whole entire torso. That's another way that you could put it.
Cool.
And that takes practice though, because most people in the beginning, they can either get their breath down into the belly or just into the rib cage, and this isn't moving, and that's a result of the nature of the jobs that most people have in society today, of hunched over a computer all day or sitting in a chair. So it really takes some work to move this with your breath.
Mm-hmm. What would be the difference then of, say, going to a yoga class and then a yoga therapy session?
So a yoga therapy session is always tailored to the individual. Okay, so you can have a therapeutic yoga class. The nature of hatha yoga is always therapeutic, to bring the body back into balance, regardless of what practice you're doing. But it might not be directly addressing the torn rotator cuff in one of the students in the class. Okay, so for example, you come to me with a tear in your rotator cuff. Okay, I'm going to give you first some exercises that are going to repair that.
I actually have this right now, by the way.
Oh, you do?
Yes, my left.
Okay.
It's funny you brought that up.
Very, very synchronistic.
You're picking up some vibes, aren't you?
But so I would give you exercises for the rotator cuff, but then number 2, I would still also give you a therapeutic sequence that you can use to bring your whole body back into balance. Because regardless, whenever anybody has an injury, doesn't matter if you've broken your little toe or even your little finger, right? One little injury throws the whole entire body out of balance. It doesn't matter, because you start compensating with other parts of the body to let that area heal. So
it's almost like a chain reaction, right? So
yeah, because
your wrist will compensate, your forearms will compensate, and then all of a sudden everything's going up the ladder there.
Yes.
Okay.
The whole body works in a kinetic chain. It's nothing is actually really separate from one another.
There's these
So
circuits running through our body, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you come to me and I just treat your problem, you're probably not going to step fully back into a place of wellness. Of course, your shoulder might feel better, but it's not necessarily going to address the other imbalances that happened in your body.
And that would also be a mental one as well.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, a lot of clients that come to me, I have to help them on really a large mental scale to talk them out of a place of sickness and actually becoming well again, because it seems to be in human nature for people to live their sickness rather than actually look at the good that's happening to them right now.
Mm-hmm. And especially now more than ever. I do
Yeah.
have a question. How with men in yoga, are you seeing a growth? Just because this is a men's yoga podcast, and with your experience and with your teaching experience, are you seeing a growth with men getting into yoga?
Yeah, it's a little bit more than say like 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say that that yoga is still mainly women's, dominated by women at a lot of the yoga studios, and that's probably the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean. It's
Yes, yeah, totally.
yeah.
And I mean, you've come from this blue collar welding background.
Mhm.
Myself has come from that as well. I was a gas fitter.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and we do damage to our body. We do quite a bit of damage to our body. And going to a gym, is that the next best thing we should be doing? I mean, my initial thought was that, okay, I need to take care of my body. I need to build up because we do a lot of physical work. You know, that's where I initially came from. Is that what the body needs?
Well, I mean, I can't really be the one to tell somebody what their body needs or doesn't need, but
What should you include with that?
I would say if somebody is really adamant about taking up a weightlifting routine, at least have a mobility or deep stretching routine that will complement that if they don't want to do yoga. Because ultimately, like any activity that gets people moving these days and off the couch is great. But I see this growing trend in, you know, people wanting to go and do these high intensity workouts and stuff like that. And on top of that trend, it's also a trend that I get a lot of those people who have been injured in those types of workout styles. So in my humble opinion, I think anything like yoga or Pilates is really the way to go in terms of physical movement. If you're
Yeah,
just,
so it's finding it's bringing something in to bring that balance in.
yeah,
Because I like for myself, I was doing a ton of wrenching, and then I would go home and lift weights. And now I've been already tearing my muscles like throughout the day, and now I'm going to go do a little bit more, right?
yeah,
And then I would also introduce, like, even recently, since I've been on this trip coming out here, I started to try to get back into P90X a little bit because my daughter was interested into it, right? And so I would do it with her, and instantly the impact was killing me. Like I was injuring myself again, and like that's why I'm dealing with this rotator cuff issue, and yeah, back at square one, and now using yoga to rebalance myself, even though I was using yoga throughout that entire time, but doing strictly just yoga to bring in some physical well-being into my body.
right. And Well, I think that ultimately when you have an injury, if you're not going to take up, say, an actual yoga therapy sequence or program, or seek out a yoga therapist, any sort of well balanced hatha yoga practice is going to do you a whole lot better than going and pumping weights at the gym.
So
100%.
what would be, so why hatha over like a vinyasa, or would you say both are fine?
So, well, it depends on what kind of vinyasa we're talking about. Are we talking about a new age vinyasa class, or are we talking about
I would,
old school vinyasa?
let's talk about a new age vinyasa class, because that's what seems to be around. That's what you seem to find.
So a new age vinyasa class, I wish I could wipe those off of like every studio schedule that's out there. I think I've I feel kind of, you know, egoic when I say it this way, but I've never seen a modern vinyasa class that's not complete garbage, because it seems to be a whole conglomeration of postures that are thrown into a yoga practice that the teacher, it's almost as if they think that it's fun to teach the students to do that. And half of the teachers that I see can't do the postures themselves, and B, they have no idea how to even instruct these postures. So a lot of people, they end up getting hurt in these classes. And the modern vinyasa style has almost been turned into this aspect of exercise yoga. So it's almost like it's a yoga HIIT class, and it's not bringing the body back into balance. It's bringing the body out of balance. So no, I wouldn't recommend anybody with an injury to go to a class like that.
Yeah, it's almost, I could see it being beneficial maybe to get someone in that's from like a workout routine, and it's almost like a transition in a way. But then you need to go deeper almost. Like I didn't start with that. I started straight with hatha. So when I go to that now, and it was a classical hatha, it was a Shivananda classical hatha. And so when I go to that now, I see it as my workout in a way, but then I still need to introduce like a hatha into my body, because then I still don't feel like I find the balance within there.
Right. I mean, the hatha yoga system, looking at just the asanas, just that part of the yoga, was actually really meant to be physical exercise.
Right.
The asanas were meant to, you know, take you into your body, bring the body back into balance with the spirit and the mind, and then prepare you for meditation, right? But where was I going with that?
Well, would you say it's like an evolution that's happening within the humans?
Yeah,
we still step back. We still need to go back to the classics. There's a reason why those were practiced for so many thousands of years.
Yeah, and the reason why they're practiced and still practiced today is because it works. I mean, I'm seeing it work in my body and in my mind. I practice literally nothing but this old school hatha system that it was first documented between the 5th and 10th century AD, which was a very long time ago. And it's been the most beneficial thing that I've ever brought into my life. I've noticed more health benefits in terms of my mental state and my physical state than any other yoga I've ever practiced.
It seems like the interest isn't there though, right? It's not as high as those ones. So you're suggesting for people that, okay, get into the vinyasa, or the new age vinyasa, practice that, but then give yourself time to do a classical and
Yeah.
and not just a one-off, because I find a lot of people, even when I teach classical hatha, they'll do it once and they won't really come back, because it is a challenge. It is a different type of challenge.
Well, especially with the Shivananda practice, because I know that's what you're teaching. Those postures are held for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the last time I did an advanced Shivananda class, they had you in like forearm balance scorpion for about 2 minutes, and I thought like,
Yeah.
wow, this is the longest scorpion hold I've ever done. um, yeah, and I can understand how it would throw a lot of the people in this society off, because everybody's used to moving so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the hatha yoga system is not so appealing to people at first, until you can actually teach them how to slow down. And I find actually the best way to do that is in a very small group setting. It's hard to slow people down in a big class setting, because you can't get to them one-on-one. But I find that the people that become the most interested in an old practice like that are the ones that are just simply coming to me to learn that practice.
Are you finding them to be more new into yoga, or like a newbie, or more it's a ladder stepping up?
It's a ladder stepping up for most of them. One lady I have right now, she was practicing like hardcore vinyasa yoga for years and complaining about not making, any progress. And
Mm-hmm.
then she came to me back in February, and she's been working with me one-on-one since. And the transition that I've seen in the from February up until now is astounding.
Wow.
Like both in mental state and in physical state.
Cool. Let's hop back to a little bit about you now, because I want some people like to learn a bit more about you, and
Sure.
what does a normal day for Dustin look like?
Well, I typically on a busy day, which is most days these days, I get up between 6 and 7, get myself ready, do a morning ritual of like a neti pot. I'll have a tea, and then I'll sit down, do a small morning meditation, and start my practice. So my yoga practice takes me typically between 2 and 3 hours every day. And then after that,
And that's a long time. What's included in that in your yoga practice? Is it straight asanas, or are you including pranayama and other things?
oh yeah, so it always starts off with some seated pranayama exercises and some standing pranayama exercises, which are prevalent to the classic 84 practice. Um, and then the actual asana portion of my practice will usually be about the 2 hour mark. So the other half an hour in there is the pranayama, and also a long savasana at the end.
Right. What is the most important part you feel in there? If you could pick, if you only had a half hour, what are you taking?
Out of that to practice, out of that practice?
Yeah.
In half an hour, I would do the seated pranayama, some of the warm-up postures that are included in the seated portion.
Mm-hmm.
I would do one set of salutes, and then I would take savasana.
Cool. And shavasana is a really important part of that we all tend to skip.
Absolutely. I mean, in a 90-minute practice, 1 hour to 90 minutes, you should probably lie in savasana for at least 5 minutes, and most people don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels great if you actually press pause and do that.
Absolutely.
Cool. So what is the difference of a Hatha 84?
The difference between 84 and what? Like
And say like a typical hatha class, like what are you working on in a hatha 84?
Okay, so the let's get into what the 84 system is first. So in the Hindu lineage, the classic 84 system is the basis of all yoga asanas. Okay, so your Ashtanga practice, your Iyengar practice, your Shivananda practice, those are all derivatives of the classic 84.
Cool.
Okay. So the classic 84 was like I said before, first documented between the 5th and 10th century AD in India. And there was a guru teaching it back then. His name was Yoga Matsyendra Natha. And so his whole yoga sect was actually called the Natha sect of yogis. And they were known as like the first physical culturists back then. They were obsessing over their bodies and obsessed about bringing their bodies back into balance. Okay, and this particular series of postures was just passed down from teacher to student over the generations. So there was never actually a set sequence, an original set sequence ever documented of these postures. They would just put a sequence of the postures together each day and practice what their body needed. And so an 84 practice consists of pranayama, deep breathing, and the opening pranayama practices usually take about half an hour. And then you do 3 different types of salutes. You have salute to the gods and the goddesses. You have a classic sun salute, which is very similar to the Shivananda salute. Mm-hmm. And then you have what's called a salute to the moon. So you're basically saluting the whole entire universe. Okay, and I'll get into it. I'll get into why after.
Cool.
And then after the salutes, you get into one-legged balancing postures. Then you get into some separate leg stretching, like wide-legged forward bending. Okay, and then there's a lotus series. There's a back bend series. There's a leg over the head series, and then there's your inversions, headstands, forearm balances, handstands. And like pretty much the practice encapsulates the whole 9 yards of everything that you'd even see done in say like a modern yoga practice in some aspects. Like there's a lot of physical work involved.
So with the goal of that, is the goal still the same to reach eventually this enlightenment through these practices, or is it straight just a physical taking care of the body?
No, so the goal of the Hatha yoga system is to bring all your body's systems into alignment, and that's your mind, body, and your spirit. Mm-hmm. And it is said if yoga is not practiced in that way, then you are losing the true essence of the yoga. The Hatha yoga is lost in that sense.
How big is the classic 84? Are you seeing it around quite a bit? I mean, I didn't know pretty much any of it until I met you.
So it's not very big in Ontario. As far as I know, I'm the only person in Ontario that teaches it, like outwardly to the public. Mm-hmm. It is a little bit bigger in BC. There are some studios that host classic 84 classes, specifically Bikram studios, because the Bikram sequence is actually the beginner 84. It's all of the beginning postures from the classic 84. And a lot of people don't actually know that.
Interesting. Yeah. So, what is your if you were going to suggest a place for someone to start yoga, what would you suggest for them to go? Say I'm coming to you, hey Dustin, I want to get into yoga, I work normally my 9 to 5 or whatever. How do I approach yoga? How do I get into this?
I would say to go find a Bikram studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, because although I'm not a big fan of, the man himself. There's a lot of things going on there that I'm not even
Yeah.
going to get into.
Yeah.
But I would say that Bikram yoga is one of the most unadulterated forms of yoga that you can still find. You are getting a very basic, pure hatha yoga practice when you go to a Bikram class. It's like, yeah, yes, the teacher, might be yelling at you and commanding you like a drill sergeant to get into the postures. But you know what? A lot of people in this society, they need that. They need to actually learn how to center themselves and do something without
Interesting.
wavering off of it. Okay.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these teachers that come over here these gurus tend to have some bad rep with them or something. There's always some type of complaint with it, right?
It doesn't matter what yoga guru or leader in the yoga world you come across. There's always somebody that is going to complain about them and call them like a horrible human being and this and that. And
Or they've done horrible stuff, or there's been horrible this. But I think it just goes to the fault of humans, man. Fault of humanity, right? We're still humans in the end of it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of even like leaders in the yoga world in that are just from North American culture too, that have done very questionable things to their students over the years. It's not just the Indian guru that's coming over here. It's just sometimes, unfortunately, I think it's a racial thing when they see, oh, this, foreign guy came over here and did all these things, but then look at the white guy over here who did all these things too. It's like, why is there more emphasis being put on the guy from the other country?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So are there other physical practices or something that may be another tradition that you practice, or are you strictly practicing yoga?
Nothing that I strictly practice other than the 84, but I do like the Shivananda practice a lot.
Yeah.
That's another practice where if there was a studio offering that practice, I would also recommend somebody to go there, like equal to a Bikram practice for sure.
Okay. Is it just because it's really close to the traditional practice?
Yeah. I mean, like Shivananda is a traditional practice that there is incorporating the postures from the original 84 system. Like none of those postures are new. Shivananda came together as a practice from the guy himself somewhere around the 1950s. But all that is that's just another hatha yoga sequence that's pure and unadulterated.
Yeah, and he was a doctor, right? And he brought in his experience of the body and how to make it healthy.
Absolutely. And I think that yoga that the Shivananda practice really works too, if you give it a chance.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how you have these old sutras and no one's really like, are people reforming these sutras in ways and teaching them to people? Like, it's almost like you take the asanas and then they're reforming them into a new age thing. But the old teachings, are they actually doing that as well? Like the knowledge of yoga, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost, I got into this conversation with somebody else not so long ago. There's two ways to look at it. You can take these old sutras and these teachings and you can apply them to how you're living in society today, because it's not like we're monks, living in a monastery for the most part, where there's no external distractions going on, and then you can do all these what seem to be insane practices. But you have to take the bits and pieces of them and practice them how you can practice them in the world that you're living in. But there seems to be this movement of yoga teachers that I call the anti-yoga teachers, teaching, I don't know what the hell it is, but they seem to be like very, very highly against what's said, in the Yoga Sutras, and they're trying to like reform this whole mindset practice. And like, excuse my language, I'm like, well, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, why don't you just take something that's working and apply it to your life in the way that you need to apply it, instead of just speaking out against it and saying that it's wrong, because it's obviously not wrong. It works. You have to give it a chance to work, because those practices,
and there's a reason why it's been working. There's a reason why it's still here.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? If it didn't work, then it wouldn't be around, and there would be adaptations.
Yes.
Where can people find Dustin? Where can we search you up and get some teachings out of you?
So I'm on Instagram as aptum_yoga, and I also have a website of aptumyoga.com, and I have a whole booking system on there, so people can just book online and come in person to the studio. And I'm just on Hunter Street, right at the corner of Locke, right in downtown Hamilton.
Are you offering online teachings? Or is it strictly in person?
I do offer some online teachings. I don't offer the 84 online though, because that is something that needs to be experienced in person. So I do offer some yin yoga as online offerings. That's another actually passion of mine that we haven't gotten into, is the yin yoga. And then I also have a class that's called a hatha mix class. So I keep that to a very traditional sequence that's based on the 84 and some of the Shivananda practice. And I find it a very good introduction to the 84 for people to get their feet wet. And that I will offer online. And the reason I don't offer the 84 online, the biggest reason is because it's a practice that most people have never experienced, and there's some movements and postures in that class that you need to get a small group experience and one-on-one attention with, so that you can properly execute it in the body and not get hurt.
Yeah, it's very, very important.
Yes.
And with your hatha mix class, that's the online one, right?
Yeah, it can be accessed in person and online.
Okay, cool. And then that's in Eastern time. So
that's at 10:30 a.m. EST on Saturdays.
On Saturdays, cool.
Yeah.
And you're on Instagram. You got classes online. We'll have all those in the show links. And I think we could probably end it here. Is there anything? Actually, I do want to know, what does yoga mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I someone came to me with that the other day, and I was like, geez, I never really sat with it like that. So I feel like it's something that, I don't mean to catch you off guard or anything, but I mean, you don't have to be deep about it, but
I think it's something that's changed over the years, really, because so when I first got into yoga, for example, treating my back and neck pain, it was almost a completely physical practice for me. I was using it as a therapy just for what was going on in my body, but in turn, I started to notice the mental and spiritual benefits automatically from just doing a regular practice. And so now with yoga, I would say it's a therapy for all of me, really. it's something that makes me every day. If I don't practice yoga every single day, like I'm agitated. I have to get up and do my practice every day.
Would you suggest that to someone starting off to practice every day, to bring some type of practice in every day?
Absolutely. I would say to start off slow. And so when people come to me, I always start them off with anywhere from like 20 to 30 minutes. Sometimes even if that, I'll give them some very basic seated postures with the basic yogic breath, and then maybe a couple standing exercises and then a savasana. And then it starts to get them into their body and into a routine, and they start to feel the benefits of it. And then we work from there. But if you bite off too much at first, then you'll get both mentally and physically fatigued really fast, and you won't want to do it.
And that's the challenge nowadays, because everybody wants it now.
Yeah. And you can't have it all now. If you want it now, you're going to get physically hurt and you're going to get mentally hurt too. It kind of goes hand in hand.
And it's lifelong, right? You don't have to be running off into the mountains, right? To find a guru, which was my first impression when I got my first yoga book before even practicing. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm reading this. I'm like, I got to go to the mountain. Like, it was just, but he addressed that after, you just have these visions of what it actually is, and you don't have to renunciate your life. You can bring it into your life.
Absolutely.
And so don't let it scare you. Let it help you open the door and find out who you are.
Yeah. And the experience of the yoga is going to be different for everybody. Of course, I think that humanity is always on the same general path of, liberation of yourself, but it's not, you're not going to feel, the same things as I necessarily feel when you're doing the practice. It might be similar, but it's not going to be the same.
And for health long-term and for something to last, you have to take the baby steps, and you got to take your time.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Dustin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was great.
This was really fun.
I'd love to have you on again, and we've been talking about maybe diving into some other stuff you want to share.
Absolutely.
And, I think that'd be a great idea. But we'll sign off here for now, and thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll check you on the next episode.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Have a great day.